Welcome to the Gritty Gospel Podcast, where we are unveiling the gospel truth in the grittiest moments of life. All right, everybody, welcome to the podcast. I'm really thankful that you have decided to join us today. And I'm also thankful to be sitting here with my good friend, Amy Hines. We're doing it. We're here.
Doing it. It
Awesome.
took everything to get here. We got this.
Yeah, y'all don't know the half. It's been a
But when you're
a
doing
trek.
great things, that's how that goes. That's how
Right.
that goes. It's part of the experience.
Yeah. I think one lesson that I've learned is that when you are finding resistance, that's probably a good indication that you're going in the right direction.
That's it.
Because
Absolutely.
we fight a spiritual battle. Today we are talking about American culture, but we're coming to you on Memorial Day. And one of the reasons why this was important is one, because this is how God planned it, and I'm thankful for that. But another reason is because it gives us a moment to pause and think back about, where we reflect, right? And it's important to know like where we come from so we can have a good understanding of where we're going.
That's it.
And not repeat some of the same mistakes. So thank you again for being here.
Absolutely. You're welcome.
Yeah. So
I really appreciate you having me on.
Well, you know what? I don't think there could have been anyone else better. I mean, should we talk a little bit about the history? I mean, of where we've.
Oh yeah, I think we should.
Okay. All right. So I think so. Amy Hines, you are not only an amazing person, but you also have an amazing history and backstory. We're not going to get into all that today, right?
Right. No. Today is not about Amy. Thank goodness.
But when it is kind of sort of about Amy, or what your mission is Amy Hines Real Talk.
Mm-hmm.
You do your best to speak words of encouragement into people's lives.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why I really wanted to have you on the podcast. So tell everyone just a little bit about Amy Hines and what that's all about.
Sure. Yeah. So for me, as you well know, I mean, this started by accident when I was volunteering in prison. I was not in prison. I was volunteering in prison. They did let me out against their better judgment. And from that, I was just asked continuously, Amy, you need to tell this story. You need to tell this story. And I didn't understand the power of telling my story. And I still don't think I fully understand that, but as the word says, by the blood of the Lamb and the words of our testimony. And so I'm really kind of leaning into that space. But for me, it was in some ways a journey of some healing for myself, of being able to take this thing that had been rattling around in my head my whole life and find a way to put some words to it. And what that has meant to helping other veterans put words to their story and what that has meant for them. And then we're going to see where this goes. But what has been most important in this entire process isn't so much about me and my story, so much as being able to demonstrate. It isn't just about pithy words of encouragement, but finding, in the midst of everything, the Lord uses everything. Nothing goes to waste. And so how he will repurpose things and how he will weave things together. And so I'm just enjoying the journey. And that's really a lot of what it is. I don't have it all figured out. I'll never pretend to have it all figured out, but it's allowing people into that journey and into that space and to just see how the Lord wants to use it. But it's all about finding the light, right? And we're going to talk about some of that, I think, today, of where are we, but more importantly, how do we navigate through that and get to the other side? It's not just about how bad have things gotten and can we just analyze that, but how do we move through that and what is our role in that? So that's a lot of what Amy Hines Real Talk is. So it's not just about any sort of political narrative, but it is inviting people into my story and inviting them into their own story.
Yeah, I think that's important because, the essence is that real talk, and of course the story of, each person is special and unique, and often I think that's where a lot of the challenges that we have come from, because everybody's trying to be heard.
Yes.
But
And you have to come up with some new niche and be something extra special and no, be who God created you to be.
It's funny how things are kind of coming full circle, right?
Coming full circle.
People just want to hear it straight. They don't want the glitz and the glamour. It's like, just give me the truth.
Yes.
So you had mentioned that you were, you are a veteran, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing I wanted to ask you, we're here on Memorial Day. For you, and your experience, what does Memorial Day mean to you?
Sure. So for me, and I'm, my time in service is pretty low key, and I'm certainly no hero, and I don't have any sort of spectacular war story or anything like that. But I feel deeply honored to be a part of that 1% and the history and the warriors that have served before me, the warriors that I served with, and the warriors that will come after me, and to be able to participate in that culture and the passion that I have for my brothers and sisters and the community that I developed there was such a gift to me. I mean, I always felt very patriotic and that sort of thing before, but then going in, and here's the kind of interesting twist to it, right? You go in and you have kind of these rose-colored glasses of it,
Right.
something that is noble and worthy, and it is all of those things. But kind of coming out on the other side of that as well, when people say things like military grade, that doesn't mean what you think that means, right? I mean, there's a whole other level of insight that you get when you're a part of it. And then I think since then, seeing, our withdrawal from Afghanistan and things like that. So things that we signed up for, and I'll speak for myself, things that I signed up for that, I thought I was doing a good thing and I thought I was doing a noble thing. And now kind of reflecting back and seeing what the powers that be have done and some of the truth that is coming out. And I think there's more truth that will continue to come out. It's kind of devastating, to be honest. And it's been very hard within the communities. I mean, within the veteran community, when we pulled out of Afghanistan the way that we did,
Yeah.
it was absolutely devastating. And I've done a lot of work with suicidal veterans as a former suicidal veteran myself. Now, to be clear, my suicidal run ins, that was more of my past, even from childhood, kind of catching up to me. So there's, again, not glamorizing any sort of PTSD or putting anything on my story that doesn't belong there. But finding that community helped me find my voice and helped me to work through some of those things and to show up for that community. So Memorial Day is multi-layered for
Yeah.
me. There's reverence and there's honor, but there's a deep sadness as well. But I think, ultimately it goes back to John 15:13, so there's no greater love than to lay your life down for your brother.
Yeah.
And so that, no matter what the powers that be that tried to maybe weaponize or use, honest patriotism for corrupt purposes and try to make us pawns, it doesn't erode the community that we have with one another, that it's a melting pot, and you come into this and you meet people from all over the place, and you may disagree on a lot of things, but when the metal meets the meat, there's one thing you do agree on, and it's getting one another through it alive, and hopefully with your sense of humor intact on the other side.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I like that, and I think even I never served, but I have a lot of family who have, and as a citizen who I think where I can kind of relate, when I was growing up in the '80s and in the '90s, and being a media professional now, the way that the world looked, the way that America looked was like G.I. Joe. We were the
Yes.
fighting heroes. We were the good guys all
Yeah.
the time. And we were the ones where people wanted to we were the country that people wanted to flock to because they could have something here, this elusive thing called freedom that they couldn't find anywhere
Yeah.
else.
Yeah.
And then fast forward to today, and you realize that it isn't exactly that anymore. Maybe it never was, but I definitely think that, we were more of a light on the hill than we are
That's
today.
it. You nailed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, a light on the hill, salt and light is what we were always meant to be.
Yeah,
Kind of
absolutely.
the what's the word? The Gentile brother, of the Israelites, meant to make them jealous and push them forward, in the best sort of way that, biblically speaking, I mean, that's where, the Gentiles were in a way they had equal stake in the Messiah and all of that. And so their charge was to do it right in such a way that it would encourage and challenge, our Jewish brothers and sisters to carry that forward and keep them in the fight as well. But we are meant to protect them. We are meant
Yeah.
to love on them. We are meant to partner with them. We are meant to be an ally always. And we had lost that for a while, and we're getting back to that. But with that comes resistance. I mean, the powers that be right now are just
Yeah.
raging against. But thank God we have a remnant spiritually and I think physically as well.
There's when we were talking beforehand, you would use the term Christianese, and I know that that's a thing.
It's a thing.
But I will definitely, but words have power. And
Yeah.
when we talk about that God is still on the throne, when we say those words, a lot of time I think that can feel like Christianese for a lot of people who love God. But we cannot minimize what that means.
Right.
Because I think when we do that, what we are basically saying and feeling to ourselves is like, we feel like we're always on our heels instead of having the God of the universe who holds everything in his hands, who is undefeated from the beginning to the end,
Yeah.
is on our side.
Absolutely.
And I worry sometimes because, Memorial Day is one of those days to reflect and remember. But, moving forward, we have a lot of great hope, which we'll talk about in a moment.
Yeah.
But, God is good. So, yeah, just to wrap up, what as a person who hasn't served, and when I think about the sacrifices that people have made for this country and for this land and for the ideal of America, as I get older, I try to, and I have, wife and family and friendships that are now 20 years old. How can I can't even say that? It's like, wow, Father Time.
Listen, I'm older than you are, don't you?
But it just helps me understand that through the good and the bad, there were people who gave it all up. They gave it all up so we would have a fighting chance.
Yeah.
And so when we go through all the toughness, just to be able to sit here and have a conversation, I think it reminds me that it's worth it to go through every single up and down just to get here, because this is what a lot of people gave everything away for so that we could have a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just about us. And I think we'll kind of get to some of that in our discussion points as well. But this isn't just about America. I mean, Memorial Day, we want to honor that for our veterans who have served past, present, and future. And it is for not, there's Veterans Day that is for the living veterans, but Memorial Day is for those veterans that never came home, that served and really paid the ultimate price. And in culture, I mean, you can use that to mourn losses in your family as well, but it's intended for military service. And so we want to honor that, but America isn't just about America. And I think we've lost that on both sides of that coin, but I think we'll get to that in future questions that we have coming.
Yeah. So, but let's talk about that. I mean, we talk about American culture. And I think, so for those of you who don't know, my wife, she's from Estonia. And one of the things that I've really loved about being able to go and visit with her and her family is that they have a very clear culture, right?
Yeah.
So they have their traditions, they have the things that they've done for years, they have a huge history to look back on. And though we have a history here in the United States, it's a melting pot.
It is a melting pot.
We're a blend,
Yeah.
right? So American culture by nature is an extension of the world's culture.
100%.
So
as well it should be.
And it should be, right? Because if there's one thing that, I think we are doing in today's culture, if we talk about like how would we describe American culture today, we do a lot of dividing, right? We do a lot of separation.
Oh, yeah.
But the unifying factor that this country was founded on, was that people were coming from their cultures, not to displace their cultures, but to find the one thing that we could all agree that we wanted, which was freedom.
Yep. That's it. Absolutely. And we've weaponized it. Well, not we,
yeah.
the powers that be.
Yeah.
Have tried to weaponize that. So it was meant to be that you bring your culture in and it becomes a melting pot. And so I'm not stepping on your culture and you're not stepping on my culture, but we agree on a certain set of compromise for the greater good. We're honoring one another's differences. Well, now it is that we are weaponizing the differences, is what has been pitched to us, and then certain people have grabbed hold of that, and now we've got these clubs that we're beating each other with of, trying to appropriate cultures. No, it's honoring cultures is what that is, and that should be respected. But also with that too, one of the things that there's so many things that are unique about America and how we were founded, and also this ongoing experiment. It is the first constitutional republic experiment ever, and it's in its infancy. And I think we're to a place where the metal meets the meat, where okay, we got it off the ground, now can we keep it,
Right.
or are we going to tank it? And we really need to get back to a lot of what the founders intended. And one of the things that they really intended that we've lost and has been mistaught, it has been misspoken. Speaking of words mattering, we need to be very precise with how we speak about some of these things. And they talked about separation of church and state, and we've gotten that all wrong. We've twisted it and we've tainted it, and it is church, get out of my state. No, 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 no. It was always supposed to be the church is the state. Now we don't, they were very clear. It's not supposed to be one set religion. You're not cramming religion down people's throats. But those 10 commandments are something we should all be able to agree on. Don't murder. Like, how is this controversial?
Right.
Right? Just like, a man is a man and a woman is a woman, all of these sorts of things I know, truth, and getting back to, when you kick God out of everything, now truth becomes negotiable, because you got all these various different gods, each having their own truth. At some point, they're going to come to blows, but I digress. Back to the church and state piece. The church is always meant to be the state. Those founding principles and values are supposed to be those governing principles that keep things in an order where you're not forcing religion on people, but you are giving them a structure with which they don't abuse one another. Then from there, preserving their freedoms. The government was meant to do 3 things. It was meant for defense, infrastructure, and basically creating laws and establishing laws of the land to preserve individual freedoms. And we've lost all of those things because we've lost our language. We say separation of church and state, and we don't actually know what that means.
Yeah, there's also this idea of democracy, and we keep hearing democracy to define America and culture, and it's like, one, you don't
not the same.
find you don't find democracy anywhere in the Constitution intentionally.
Right.
Which we'll talk about in a second. And then, the separation of church and state, that's not in any of the documents either. I think it was Thomas Jefferson who had mentioned that,
It was
or
in
something.
the Federalist Papers is where they started talking
Yeah.
about that. So you've got the Constitution, but then in the Federalist Papers is where they kind of go through. I mean, keeping in mind, these people were from all different walks of life, but there were several of them that were attorneys, and kind of speaking to the Bible as well, right? The Pharisees were attorneys. I mean, there is some value, even though some of what the Pharisees did wasn't great, but there was value in understanding, being able to lay out an argument that made some sort of sense. And so these men that had our founding document, that participated in the drafting of our founding documents, were very precise, and they had much better language. I mean, they didn't say "awesome, man," right? I mean, they had real language for real things. They weren't hyperbolic in any way. They were precise, and they went back after they did the Constitution, and they drafted the Federalist Papers to essentially be, and this is kind of what you'll see with Supreme Court decisions or whatnot. They will write out their arguments or why they landed on what they landed on, and give you the background of what they were thinking. So it's important. I mean, context matters.
Absolutely.
So people forget about or don't even know that the Federalist Papers exist, and we need to give them a read. You should all, everyone should give them a read.
Yeah, I think it's and it's important that we have these understandings, because really what we're dealing with is, okay, so if you look at a democracy, no matter how you slice it, what that really comes down to is mob rule.
Yep. Absolutely.
The elites are going to dictate for the masses how it's going to be, which
Yep.
is exactly what the founding fathers and the founding pilgrims and Americans were against.
That's right.
It
That's
was
what they wanted
right
to
there in front of
avoid.
their face.
Yes.
And they wanted people to have the ability to have freedom, because it wasn't like everybody
Yep.
who was, all those founding fathers were not Christian people. They had
Correct.
many of them who didn't even believe in God. But what they wanted is to make sure that their individual way of life was protected. And so they formed a republic.
As well, it should be.
Right.
That's exactly what it was meant to be. I'm not going to beat you with my religious stick, and you're not going to beat me with your cultural stick, or
Right.
vice versa. It's so that preserving those individual freedoms and being able to have a conversation.
Yeah.
Those men could have a conversation. They understood the power and the value of debate.
Well, the idea is that if I have to force you to go with a good idea, it's probably not a good idea.
Probably not a good idea.
Yeah. If
Absolutely.
logic and reason are ineffective with persuading a person who is thinking and a person who is competent, well, then maybe you need to change your idea, right?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's I
And
think
we
that's
shouldn't
a
be
big
afraid of dissent. I mean, dissent is where, that's where, if we get back to what science was always supposed to be, the definition of science has changed now too. But it is where you take instead of arriving at the conclusion and then working backwards to find data to support your presumed conclusion, which is what it's become, it's supposed to be that you are an earnest seeker of whatever the conclusion may be. And so you gather evidence and you see where the evidence leads you. But in that, there's going to be some ideas that kind of rub against you, and there should be different scientists with different theories getting in a room and working that out. That friction is a good
Right.
thing. And biblically, it talks about, in good relationship, iron sharpens iron. Well, if you don't want any sparks to fly, then go ahead and take your plastic forks and rub them together. It's going to be pretty dull from the get-go, and you're not going to get a
Absolutely.
whole lot of anything of value or lasting purpose out of that. You need to embrace differing ideas. If we had it all figured out, then the 90s eyebrows would still be a thing. Now we're trying to tattoo those things back on, right? If we were so decisive about that, it's okay to grow and change your mind. That's not the same thing as being flaky. It's adjusting to new information.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people right now, we have lost the ability to be humble, right? And then lost the ability to say, you know what, maybe I don't have it all figured out. And I think that's a trap, especially if you're a person who, if we're talking to believers here, like, hey, if the gospel is really what the gospel is,
Right.
then you should not be afraid to have it when people challenge it.
Right.
And it's really not a I got you scenario. I think a lot of
should
times
never be.
we go into it with the wrong mindset off
Should
jump.
never
Like,
be.
I got to win an argument.
Right.
We're talking about people's souls here.
Right.
So from that perspective, it should always be throw the best at it and see if you can break the gospel. See if there's anything in that book that doesn't work. And I think some people have fooled themselves to think that that's the case, because we haven't gone deep enough. And that's both whether you believe in God or not. But I think for the believer, it's something that we should be comfortable in the uncomfortable realms of the world, and that should be, God, if I don't have the answer here, so
Right.
reveal it to me. If we're not doing that, then we're doing ourselves and everyone else a disservice.
Oh man, just so many things that you said in all of that to unpack, and I'll be brief, but everyone needs to have the opportunity to work out their own salvation. And if we are coming at them with this heavy stick and being like, I'm right, no, give them a chance to ask questions. And frankly, if our faith is built on, well, because mommy and daddy said so, you did not work out your own faith. You need to go and honestly, if your salvation is hanging on it and your eternity is hanging on it, you better look for every kind of way to punch holes in it. And make sure that you understand what you believe and why. Now, with that though, respect other people's journey. They're not ours to save. honestly, the best thing that we can do is be the salt and the light and have the fruit. And so the way that we navigate things where they're freaking out and they're watching the news and they're seeing everything happen, and they watch us operate in peace, where peace that passes all understanding, we are able to go to war and not flinch. It doesn't mean you're not scared, but it means that you're relying on the power and the authority that the Lord has given you. But give them a chance to ask hard questions.
Yeah.
And give them a moment of pause. It isn't about, I think the worst thing that the church can do, and I think one of the things that needs to happen, the Western church is gone very much awry and off path, and it's become about religion and smoke and lights and, the right amplifiers and a weak message.
Yeah.
We need to get down to basics where you're outside on a hill, you have none of those things, and you're just preaching the word. The word will speak for itself. It doesn't need our help. But there are going to be hard things in there. So letting them work that out and allowing there to be moments of discomfort where you're not trying to just fill in the blank for them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Let them marinate on it. Let them pace themselves. But the gotchas or the, hey, I told you so is one of the worst things we could possibly do in this next season, especially as the remnant. And I think we'll do some more talking about the remnant. We're in some dark spaces, but even though we're in some dark times, the Lord always does a few things. He always will give warning through his prophets. And his prophets are speaking like they have never spoken before. There are true prophetic voices out there right now that have a lot of things to say, to give warning, because God is merciful. He's not out to just beat us up and say, well, you should have known better. He gives us warnings. He gives us chance after 400 years for the Israelites to turn back. So he gives us warning as one. But then the other thing that he will do is something that I actually forgot while I was talking. So I'll come back to that.
Okay. All right.
I
No
had
worries.
it right there. It was, so he'll give us warning. But he leaves a remnant. That was the other thing.
Yeah.
I kind of hit that and forgot to come back
Yeah.
around to it. But he'll leave a remnant. It only took 300. For Gideon to defeat the army. In fact, he had more. And the Lord said, no. I don't
You don't even need that much.
I don't need that much. I just need the ones that truly have their eyes on it, their head on a swivel, and the ones that are really committed. Less is more, quality over quantity.
I'm pulling this out because this coin, it says something on it that really kind of speaks to that too, and I'll share this with you in a minute. But John F. Kennedy, what did he say? We dare not forget that we are the heirs of that first revolution, that remnant that we have, not just from all of the previous wars, but from the very first for this country is something to remember.
Yes.
Because I think when we talk about the dark times, one of the things that's been really interesting to me when I look back at American history is that we've had two great awakenings. And it has come because we have gone through those really dark times. We've come out of them and then we kind of regress. It seems like we're modeling the children of Israel, right? Like in their same thing.
So many, it's so easy to read the Bible and see it, be like, oh my gosh, were they ever going to get it?
Which is weird because I always get everything right on the first try. That's just been how my life has
Absolutely.
gone.
Me too. All the plans that I had for myself have worked out seamlessly.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Are we the only two?
Yeah. It's just us. So no, definitely not. I think history, the Lord is not to be put in a box. Certainly, He can do things however He wants to do. But the nature of humans means that there's nothing new under the sun, and that's biblical as well. We do have a tendency to repeat history, and because we're foolish enough to think, well, sure, that's what happened, but we're more advanced, we're smarter, we're better than that. No. We still put our pants on one leg at a time, and we are still prone to the same things. And kind of to that point, I believe, one of your questions was talking about, for America, where are we at in America? And I think a good question to lead into that, the warm up to that is, well, how did we get to where we are. And Rabbi Jonathan Kahn, if you haven't listened to any of his stuff, I highly encourage it. His books are phenomenal, but he has a new book out. So one of his first books that he was known for was The Harbinger. And then he's done another book, and it's The Return of the Gods. And it's super profound because he talks about three gods, and I'll keep it brief. Go get the book, okay? But the first was, and we're going to basically hone in on the 1960s. So the first god to come in was Baal, or we call it Baal. And Baal's job is to get God out of the culture, to create a path. So he's the spearhead that always comes in. And what happened in the 1960s? We took prayer out of schools. Not only did we take prayer out of schools, but let's be clear, if you go after the children, you've got the future. So they always go after the children. So we took prayer out of schools. Then the next one to come in is Ishtar. So Ishtar is the prostitute, is his wife, is her job is to sexualize the culture. Now the things that, so then we had the sexual revolution in the 60s, right? So we've now kicked God out. We've sexualized the culture. Also, another Greek name for her, so many names. So Ishtar, a lot of people will know her as Aphrodite. And then Porne is another kind of Greek name for her, and that's where you lead into pornography. Well, pornography is to corrupt. It also, so it'll feminize the men, it'll masculinize the women. Now we've got trans, now we've got drag. Her temple prostitutes were men dressed as women, or they would surgically castrate themselves and celebrate in the month of June. June was her designated month, and they would be
some dots here, huh?
They would be very proud. Absolutely, they would be very proud of. I mean, they would do dances holding the scalpels. You know, so then all of that erodes the nuclear family.
Sure.
There's a lot to unpack in Ishtar alone, and then the one that comes after that, the third one, is Molech. Molech is the sacrifice of the children. For all the sacrifice that happened then, I mean, we've sacrificed over 60,000 babies. They're a baby when we want it to be a baby,
yeah,
but then
that's
they're not when
right
it's
there.
when they're inconvenient. But it requires blood. It absolutely requires blood. So you bring all of those in, and that right there is how you get to where we are. So now you've created a vacuum, and biblically, the way that goes, and it says this, demonically speaking, if you create for a culture that knows the Lord and knows God and then turns from him and creates this vacuum, all of that comes back in. What is it, 7 times, I believe it is? It comes back in harder, faster, with all of its friends. And I think that's definitely where we are. I think it's very easy to kind of connect those dots once you see that. It's kind of mind-blowing.
Well, you know, it's important that we look back and we have a good memory about where we're coming from, because and then to speak up, because another area we are cutting ourselves off at the foot, or you know, we're allowing our voices to be stolen from us.
Yes.
And there's power in the spoken word. There's power in truth. It's one of those things, like, well, I've just always been amazed at this. It's hard. You can't really feel it with your hands. But when you hear truth, even if you have no knowledge of a subject, someone is speaking passionately about something and they're telling the truth, and it just rings through. You could be completely blind to the subject matter, but you can hear truth. It just hits the spirit different. It does. It hits different.
It hits different.
So when we don't utilize it, though, you know, when we don't speak up, it says, I forget who said it, but you know, what do they say? That only thing that evil needs to succeed is for good men to
stay
do nothing, right?
And do nothing. Yep.
So I think that is perhaps, you know, the hope that we have for our culture is that, you know, there are still conversations happening like this, that we are not totally cast out yet, that there is still a remnant. And, you know, I actually think it's stronger than it might feel at times.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. But the problem is to your point, we haven't been using our voice. We haven't been speaking and having these conversations. The more conversations like this we have, the more we realize that there are more
There's
out
more
there.
like us, yeah.
But they've been, to the point of the strategy that the enemy has been playing out, right? I mean, you keep people busy. You get people, if you can't, what is it, knock them off course, you push them too fast, right? If you can't slow them down, you just push them too fast. Well, we're 100% there, where the enemy is pushing us so fast that we've got dual households working. So now you got the kids out from underneath of their parents' care. Now the state can raise them, the state
Yeah.
can indoctrinate them. People are working for constantly being overtaxed, overworked. We are certainly in America, probably one of the worst cultures for striving. Maybe Dubai, but we are, I think, next level in how we do things, and the enemy is using that to make it where we can't focus on staying on our true mission, which is making sure that we are in fact taking care of the nuclear family and the home. That's the bedrock of all community. If you want someone, the appropriate person in the White House, it starts in your home. Absolutely. With raising your kids and not abdicating that and delegating that to the state, to do for you. So when you've got people that are participating in this rat race, then they're too tired to speak up. They're too tired to go to war for this particular fight. And we've also been lulled under the live, let live.
Okay. So basically, well, how would you describe that then? How do you think that is impacting us?
Oh gosh. I mean, live, let live is one of the best lies out there.
Yeah.
Right? That's how you get in. That's how you open the door. But if we're talking about spiritual battle, now let's be clear. Everything that we're talking about here, we're not talking about people. People are the ones that are executing these things, but it's a spiritual battle first. Everything happens in the spirit first before it happens in the natural. And there are a lot of people that have been lulled to sleep on, if you want to say sides, on both sides, on all sides, have been lulled to sleep under this, well, live and let live. And then they inch in and they inch in, right? We talked about this started in the 60s, and there were some good things, that were intended. I mean, at the same time in the 60s, we're talking about 60s and 70s, I believe it is, was the Jesus Revolution. But then people got involved in it and stifled it. So live and let live, it sounds nice, but that's not really how it goes. And that's certainly not what the Lord has said.
Well, yeah, I mean, because what we have right now is we have a twisting of values. Like, for example, they have, what is it, Satan Con or whatever that's about to happen.
Oh, yeah.
And
Just did, yep.
They're trying to
After school Satan Club.
Yeah, right. And their whole idea of is that they have the same. They're just trying to exercise the same rights that everyone else is. However, their system, their leader, if you will, has the desire to steal, kill and destroy.
That's right.
And that doesn't work for anybody.
Yep.
So
it's a very slippery slope.
It's a perversion of freedom, right? Do what you will. Well, does that mean that you get to, abuse children? Does that mean that you get to abuse women? Does that mean that you get to abuse men? Does that mean that you get to abuse, the spoken word? No, it doesn't. And that's where it's like we have to draw that line and call out the deception for what it is. So
yeah. And it opens the door too for when people take their eyes off of what the truth is. Now, if you create a crisis that you intend to solve for them, they will further deviate from that, because now we're living in a world in a situation of exception. Well, then exception, everything becomes the exception.
Right.
And now you've completely peeled the truth away from them, and there is nothing to ground them. So now you isolate them, you get them to work from home so they don't have coworkers as well.
Right.
But still, they're working so hard, they can't focus with the kids. They're still sending the kids to daycare or sending the kids to public school and all those sorts of things. And you have gone from live and let live to now we're infiltrating every part of your society, and we're doing it bit by bit by bit, and you are choosing it. you don't realize, but you are slowly
yeah,
abdicating
for it, because
and for it.
you're being passive, right?
Absolutely.
You're not drawing a line in the sand for what needs to be upheld, which is truth and justice and
Yeah.
the American way, as
The
Superman
American
used to
way.
say, right?
That's right.
Okay, so you know that we knew this. We could talk for hours.
Absolutely.
It would be very easy for us to keep going, but let's talk about, you know, before we wrap, what's the solution? I think we've done a good job of kind of talking a little bit about the history. We've definitely pointed out kind of where we're at. We've given some insight into the hope. I mean, ultimately we know that God is our hope, and why is that important for us to understand? As well, first of all, none of this is by accident, right?
Right.
If you've studied the scriptures, you know that all of this is playing out just as God has said.
That's right.
And that should give you a lot of hope. If you don't know about the gospel, well, then you might be freaking out a little bit
Yeah,
because things
absolutely.
look like it's all over the place.
Yeah.
But for those of us who are in the know, we have hope. What gives you hope? What is something that we can leave them with that gives them hope for the future?
So you had asked me a question about, what is it like to be a white veteran Christian woman in this society, and the pros and the cons. And I think it would be lazy, if not negligent at best, to lean on those as reasons to have excuses of why I'm oppressed or why I'm the oppressor or anything like that. I have a very different take on that. So I think each and every one of those is an opportunity.
Okay.
But not exclusive to me. Each person could, claim whatever their demographic is. First of all, I'm a child of God, is what I am first and foremost out of all of those things. But each one of those things that we can claim is an opportunity to point back to Him, right? So as a Christian, as the dark gets darker, then the light needs to get lighter. And this is a perfect opportunity for us, that while people are in a state of panic, and they don't even, we're not quite there yet. You and I think, are feeling and understanding and recognizing the tremors, because we've been focused on, 2 Chronicles 7:14. If my people will humble themselves and pray and turn from their wicked ways, I will forgive their sins, heal their hear
them
their
from
cries,
heaven.
and heal their land.
Yeah.
So the remnant has been focused on that from the beginning. It's not who is occupying the White House. It's not. I mean, we've all had all of these questions along the way of, man, how far down does this go? We're not even quite there yet, but I think there are things that are simultaneously going to happen. It's going to continue to get darker, but then the light is going to get lighter all at the same time. That is our opportunity, and we shouldn't shy away from that. So it isn't about being oppressed as a Christian. I mean, they are coming for the church, make no mistake.
Right.
They are coming for it. They're going to be coming for the Bible next. The writing is on the wall. That is a hill that I am willing to die on.
Yeah.
But that is where people are going to be desperate and really need the love of Jesus in the most profound way. So it's an opportunity. Everything is an opportunity to dig in personally, but also for the sake of other people, and be willing to have those hard conversations. Don't look to try and convert people overnight. It's never been our job. Be a disciple. What's your fruit?
Yeah.
Focus on you. Mind your
Yeah.
business, and everything else will kind of come from getting your own house in order.
Yeah, I do. I sense that right now. Well, let me give a little bit of context to this statement. Last night, I was watching some old video of Kobe Bryant, and what he was talking about was what gives a person value is when they work. And for the believer who may feel like you are on your heels, or you might feel as if, you know, you might be dealing with a little bit of that fear of kind of knowing what's happening because it's been shown in the scriptures, and not sure what we are to be doing right now. What we need to be doing is getting active.
Yes.
You need to be speaking. You need to be living out your faith, right? To know your value in God is to be living a life for God, right? Because you get that feedback. When you take that step of faith, God meets you where you're at. And if you shrink back in fear, then you're going to be like nobody else. We have to be taking steps. We have to be following the Spirit, and we have to be proactive.
Yeah.
Now is our time to kind of Well, and let's be clear, we're not talking about pushing back against people.
No,
We are
loving
definitely
them is
we're
actually what we
loving
need to
them,
do better.
but we're in a dogfight
Yeah.
within the spiritual world.
Hate the
The
sin, love the
gloves,
person.
the gloves are
The
off.
gloves are off.
You know, it's called the sword for a reason, aka the
The
Bible.
Bible, yeah.
You know it, use it unapologetically against the spiritual forces, but be ready to have that compassion for people when they start to see the break between their identity in sin versus what their identity in
Right.
Christ should be.
Right.
Yeah.
And it is, I mean, the enemy has had their hooks in deep into these people. And so, when you look at it as a spiritual war that it is, you've got the demonic that just has their talons deep in these people.
Yeah.
So when you're slaying those dragons and you're slaying those things in the
gonna be
spirit,
a
then
fight.
it finally lets go. These are some wounded, broken people. You
Yeah.
don't come at them and wag your finger at them and go, you should have known. No, they are bleeding out.
Yeah.
This is our opportunity to love. Hate the sin, love, fiercely love, and show up for the sinner, and without agenda.
Yeah.
What is it do they need on a practical level? But one of the things that the church did wrong, and it's part of how we got here, is the church saw things getting difficult and they abdicated and they said, well, it's the end times. So we're just going to hunker down until Jesus comes back. He was pretty clear. He's not coming back for a weak and wimpy bride. He's coming back for a bride that is going to stand and fight. And so you're
That's
waiting
what
on
we
the
need to
wrong
do.
thing at the wrong time. I mean, read the room and know the word, and not just for the sake of any sort of I gotchas, but know the word so that you know what time you're in and where you need to be standing. But there is no reason to panic. Honestly, this is what we were made for. We were born for such a time as this. It's so
Born
exciting.
for such a time as this. I agree.
So exciting.
Well, I think that's a perfect place to wrap up because we were created for this time, so there's no need for us to be afraid.
Yeah.
And I think what gives me a lot of hope is conversations like this because we are banding together. We are sharpening each other, and when we have, we're not going to lose. The bottom line is God is still on the throne. So.
100%.
Well, I thank you again for joining me, and we got to do this again. You already know.
Absolutely.
We got to do this again,
I'm
and I
looking
want
forward
to
to it.
encourage everybody to check out Amy Hines' Real Talk so you can hear more of her real conversations that are
It's
are
real talk. That's right.
real talk all day, every day. So, all right, that's it for this episode. Y'all have a great time. Peace. See you next time.
Yeah.